modes, basically. So the first two elements of emotional intelligence have to do with self-mastery. And they are based, this circuitry is the neural platform. The first of these is self-awareness, knowing what I'm feeling, knowing why I'm feeling it. Self-awareness is very important for decision-making, particularly personal decision-making, but also business or even technical decision-making for quite an interesting reason. There was a study done by a man named Antonio Damasio. He's now at USC. He's an expert on this circuitry. And because he's an expert on this circuitry, a very bright corporate lawyer who unfortunately had a prefrontal brain tumor, which was operated on quite successfully and early, but during the surgery, they snipped the connection between the amygdala and the PFC. This lawyer went to see Damasio because his life was collapsing. And Damasio tested him and couldn't see anything wrong. The lawyer's life had collapsed in this way. He seemed to be able to function just as well after surgery as before, but he couldn't keep his job. He lost his job, couldn't keep any job. His wife left him. He lost his house. He ended up living in his brother's spare bedroom. And in despair, he goes to Damasio. He says, well, you're an expert on this circuitry. Can you figure out what's wrong with me? Damasio gives him a battery of neuropsychological tests. Nothing wrong. Attention, memory, just as good as before surgery. IQ was very high still after surgery as it was before. But he couldn't keep a job. And then Damasio got a clue. He asked him this question: when should we have our next appointment? He realized that the lawyer could give him the rational pros and cons of every hour for the next 2 weeks, but he didn't know which was best. In other words, Damasio argues, when we have a thought, our emotional centers valence it for us. When we're making a decision, our emotional centers prioritize for us. He no longer had that ability. Damasio argues that in order to make a good decision, which strategy should we follow? Should our team go for plan A or plan B? How does this guy compare to the X other guys I've dated? Should I marry this guy or not? Should I leave this job for another? All of those decisions depend on our ability to draw on the wisdom of the emotions. And wisdom of emotions is not just a pretty phrase. It actually refers to something that goes on very low in the brain, in the basal ganglia, its base brain. The basal ganglia observes everything we do in life, every situation, and extracts decision rules. That worked, that didn't work. When I said that, I really blew it. When I said that, it really worked. Our life wisdom on any topic is stored in the basal ganglia. The basal ganglia is so primitive that it has zero connectivity to the verbal cortex. It can't tell us what it knows in words. It tells us in feelings. It has a lot of connectivity to the emotional centers of the brain and to the gut. And it tells us this is right or this is wrong as a gut feeling. So part of self-awareness is the ability to tune into those subtle feelings. And this is very important, for example, not just in decisions, but when it comes to ethics and integrity. The answer to the question is what I'm about to do in keeping with my sense of ethics, meaning, priorities, values, whatever, doesn't come to us verbally. It comes to us through this same nonverbal neural system, and we've got to be able to attune to feeling to read yes or no. So it's a kind of a moral rudder, too, in life. The second ability in emotional intelligence is managing emotions. And managing emotions really has to do with our inhibitory ability. I don't mean managing all emotions. I mean managing the disturbing, crippling, dysphoric emotions, the ones that get in the way. Because emotions, of course, are what make life rich. You want to mobilize your passions. In fact, the center for motivation, for maintaining goal and pursuing it, is in the left prefrontal cortex. The left prefrontal cortex, with a connection to the hippocampus, there's a node for memory, is what helps us keep in mind how good we're going to feel when we finish this. And that's probably very important around here, I would think. Because if you don't have that capacity to keep reminding you about how good it's going to feel, you give up. So motivation very much depends on this circuitry. Another ability has to do with the relationship between emotionality, impulsiveness, and learning. There was a study done just down the road here at Stanford many years ago with 4-year-olds, kids in the Stanford preschool. And these are children of professors and grad students and stuff. And each kid was brought into a room one by one and sat down at a small table, and a big juicy marshmallow is put in front of them. And the experimenter says to the kid, you can have this marshmallow now if you want, but if you wait to eat it till I come back from running an errand, you can have 2 then. And then the experimenter leaves the room. This is a situation, a predicament really, that tries the soul of any 4-year-old, I'll tell you. I've seen...
Or the rest of us.
Or the rest of us for that matter, yeah. And I've seen footage, it's very funny. Some of the kids will smell it and then jump away like it was very dangerous. Some kids go off in a corner and sing and dance to distract themselves. About a third of the kids wait out the endless 4 or 5 minutes till the, experimenter comes back and they get the 2. And about a third couldn't stand it. They just gobble it down on the spot. But the payoff finding came 14 years later. These kids are tracked down as they're about to graduate high school. And the 2 groups are compared. The kids who grabbed and the ones who waited. Very interesting, kind of staggering differences, it turns out, from such a small data point. The kids who waited compared to the ones who grabbed get along better with their friends. They're still able to defer gratification in pursuit of their goals. And the stunner was this. On their SATs, they scored 210 points higher. It's out of 16, more than the standard deviation. I told this to the people at Princeton who make up the SAT, and they were stunned. They said that's as big as the difference we see between kids whose parents have, one parent has a graduate degree at least, and kids whose parents have no education. It's a huge difference, but these were all children of Stanford folks, very high IQ families. So what's going on here? What I think is going on is that impulsivity, agitation, is a sign of the amygdala being poorly inhibited. And kids who can't inhibit the amygdala do something or have a predicament in a learning situation which handicaps them. And that is, remember I said that when the amygdala fires up, attention focuses on, and fixates actually, on what is disturbing us. Those other girls won't play with me. The melodramas of, late elementary school, whatever it may be. When that happens, it occupies the space of what's called working memory. Working memory is attention. You may remember from cognitive science the capacity of working memory is a magic number 7 plus or minus 2 bits of information. Well, if 6 of those bits of information have to do with those other girls on the playground, it means you have 1 bit of information left for what the teacher is saying to you. In other words, the SAT, which is an achievement test, it's not an IQ test, it's an achievement test. It's a test of how much you learned over the course of school. Shows that if you are chronically handicapped in this ability, you will not be able to learn. That's the bottom line from that study. And I think it's true in any situation, in any work situation, no matter what you're trying to do. The extent to which your mind is preoccupied by distressing emotions is going to shrink cognitive capacity and make it harder for you to do the work at hand. On the other hand, you could say that the ability to inhibit distressing emotions from the amygdala is an enabler of cognitive capacity because it leaves full attention available for what you're trying to do.